We came on the air. Buckingham Palace said that King Charles spent part of the day in the hospital.
A royal emergency has sent shockwaves through the nation as King Charles reportedly gave up the ghost in a sudden hospital dash shrouded in midnight mystery. But it's the explosive revelation from Piers Morgan that's igniting headlines worldwide. Well, Piers Morgan, you're the kind of person I think that would fall into the river Clay, as my dad used to say, exposing secret details, hush-hush palace panic, and a drama no one saw coming. So, what really happened during those crucial hours? Was it a health scare, a cover-up, or something even darker? Tonight, we unravel the truth behind the midnight chaos that's shaking the monarchy to its core. The midnight collapse at the palace. Sirens shrieked down the mall after 3 o'clock in the morning, slicing damp London air as blue strobes danced across Buckingham Palace gates. Traffic lights flashed uselessly while police outriders carved a path no civilian ever sees. Inside, stone corridors shook with running boots. King Charles III, working alone in his maple-paneled study, had crumpled across a desk littered with state papers. A footman, voice cracking, dialed emergency services while his fingers slipped on the keypad and his pulse thudded louder than alarms outside. Within 7 minutes, a private ambulance stationed less than a mile away for discreet training exercises, executive chairman of the Independent Ambulance Association, an organization that represents the private ambulance industry, rolled through an unmarked gate. Paramedics in plain navy jackets hurried inside using a side corridor that few staff even knew existed. Courtiers whispered the code name London Bridge, swift as they fastened the monarch to a collapsible stretcher built to fit a bland white van. No flashing lights now. Stealth beat speed. The ambulance snaked along rain-licked back lanes toward King Edward VII Hospital, shadowed by a single security Range Rover, whose tinted windows hid bodyguards and a palace press officer clutching a half-written statement. In the outside world, secrecy was shattered. Wide awake in his newsroom, Piers Morgan launched a breathless broadcast declaring the king had suffered a catastrophic cardiac event after weeks of ignored warnings. His words exploded across social media before the ambulance even reached Marylebone. Within minutes, abdication hashtags outpaced Wimbledon scores. Satellite trucks swooped toward the hospital like curious gulls. Inside living rooms across Britain, phone screens glowed as group chats filled with shock emojis, wild guesses, and frantic prayers for the 76-year-old sovereign's survival. Royal aides trapped in palace offices watched the digital storm spread faster than they could craft even one reassuring sentence. Behind frosted hospital doors, cardiac specialists prepared an operating suite while senior aides fought over the wording of a dawn statement. Some urged calm. Others feared the stock market would tumble if the truth sounded bleak. Queen Camilla, roused in Wiltshire, barreled up the M4 in a convoy that cut through sleeping villages. Prince William, suddenly staring at Regency, kept one eye on the corridor monitor and one on his buzzing phone, demanding updates no doctor dared guarantee. Preliminary scans, insiders whisper, revealed an erratic heart rhythm magnified by sleepless meetings, grueling diplomatic briefings, and looming constitutional worries. Plus, the grinding strain of family feuds, especially the simmering legal fight with the Sussexes. In an extraordinary interview tonight, Prince Harry has spoken candidly about the breakdown of his relationship with his father. One attendant heard Charles murmur, "Not now, not yet," before sedatives pulled him under. Repeated by Morgan an hour later, the phrase sparked fresh rumors. Had the king sensed this collapse coming? As pale dawn seeped over the Thames, black cabs slowed for a glimpse, and palace staff drafted statements only to shred them again. Britain hovered between anxiety and morbid curiosity, wondering whether a new reign might start before breakfast. Jittery reporters lingered nearby. To learn why Charles's heart rebelled, we must rewind through court pressures, relentless headlines, and hushed warnings hours before the incident. What hidden spark ignited destiny? Stay glued moments before the incident. To truly grasp the shocking scene that unfolded at Buckingham Palace in the dead of night, we must rewind the clock back through the foggy hours and hidden emotions that led to that ambulance tearing through London. Because this wasn't a sudden snap. It was a slow unraveling. Quiet warnings were ignored. Tensions stretched to breaking. And a series of subtle missteps painted the perfect storm for disaster. Inside the royal walls, King Charles had not been himself. Staff whispered about missed briefings and moments of forgetfulness. His daily routine, usually as precise as the palace clocks, had started to slip. He skipped his usual afternoon walk in the Rose Garden. Reports say he snapped at Camilla behind closed doors, an uncharacteristic outburst that left her speechless and red-eyed. Sources close to the palace claimed their recent arguments weren't just about duty or family matters. They had become deeply personal, laced with resentment and exhaustion. Some insiders describe a rift that had been forming quietly. Camilla, now weighed down by public opinion and the pressures of queenship, reportedly confronted Charles over his emotional withdrawal. She accused him of shutting her out, of dwelling too much on past regrets, especially involving Prince Harry. The king, frail from a recent infection and overburdened by royal obligations, allegedly responded with a sharp phrase, "You wouldn't understand the weight of legacy." That conversation, snapped in frustration and overheard by a footman, sparked concern. For weeks, Charles had displayed classic signs of emotional overload, restless pacing, forgetting names during briefings, and sleepless nights marked by long walks through the palace gallery. He was often found alone, staring at portraits, especially one of Queen Elizabeth II. Some say he'd been writing unsent letters to both Harry and William, hoping for some resolution before it was too late. Royal aides had flagged their concerns to his medical team. A private physician even increased Charles's heart monitoring after a recent faint spell during a meeting with Commonwealth ambassadors, but the monarch refused to rest. "There's no time," he reportedly muttered. "Too much to repair." And while the palace maintained a composed public image, behind the curtain, things were crumbling. Camilla had quietly cancelled a public appearance, citing a scheduling conflict. But insiders say she was deeply distressed. She reportedly confided in a senior lady-in-waiting that Charles had grown emotionally distant, like a ghost still walking his mother's halls. Then came the final trigger, a letter delivered by a discreet royal courier. It contained sensitive updates on Prince Harry's possible legal actions regarding his children's royal status. Camilla read it first. When Charles saw it later that evening, his hands trembled. He reportedly whispered, "Why now? Why always now?" He didn't eat dinner. He retired early. And then the palace fell into stillness. No crashing sounds, no cries for help, just an eerie silence until a footman noticed Charles's tea was untouched and a lamp was flickering in the study. He entered, and what he found shook the royal household to its core. Yet, this wasn't just about failing health. It was the emotional fault line between Charles and Camilla, one widening for months, now pushing deeper than anyone realized. But could their strained bond, once a force of scandalous resilience, have become part of the very pressure driving him to collapse? Was this just illness or something far more terrifying unraveling behind palace walls? Keep watching. Inside King Charles's hidden hospital crisis, while London braced for answers, across the Atlantic, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was already in motion. Its elite VIP wing operated in near silence like a theater before curtain rise. The lights dimmed, personnel hushed, and a private elevator was sealed off for exclusive use. On the 8th floor, a specially reserved suite awaited. The room was sterile, yes, but its energy wasn't. It hummed with anticipation, not from curiosity, but from urgency. Something wasn't right. Not with the patient, and not with the silence surrounding him. It was just after 5 a.m. when the disguised SUV rolled through the staff-only entrance. King Charles III, looking gaunt and pale, was stretchered into the building with his face partly covered and surrounded by 3 plain medics and 1 visibly shaken royal aide. Though sunrise had barely begun to warm the Los Angeles skyline, inside the hospital, dawn felt distant. The hallway lights flickered as if unsure whether to reveal what was happening within them. The royal's identity had been whispered to senior staff hours before his arrival. No names in writing, only codes and vague titles. But once he was in the suite, there was no hiding the truth. This wasn't just any man. This was a sovereign in distress. A team of 5 top-tier specialists assembled at his bedside, a toxicologist, a cardiologist, a crisis intervention expert, and 2 veteran internal medicine doctors. Each took on a role: blood work, heart scans, cognitive checks, and immediate stabilization. The fluids were inserted with expert precision. Monitors beeped softly. Blood samples were rushed for rapid testing. Yet, even as medicine did its job, something in the air felt heavier, not just clinical, but emotional. One attending nurse, who would later speak off the record, described Charles's expression as that of a man who had been carrying something for too long. She said he blinked as if waking from a dream, unsure of where or who he was. He asked no questions. He barely spoke. But in his silence, the weight of decades seemed to rest on his chest, and still no sign of Camilla. While doctors rushed to stabilize the king, calls were made, first to Clarence House, then to Balmoral, and finally to Camilla's personal line for hours. There was no response. Sources later revealed she had spent the night in a separate residence, one of the private Wiltshire cottages she often retreats to after intense disagreements. The last known interaction between Charles and Camilla had reportedly ended with him walking away mid-sentence, muttering something about being heard only when it's too late. By mid-morning, whispers began trickling through elite medical circles. A high-profile British figure admitted under veiled secrecy. Someone leaked a hospital intake code. Others hinted at the cause: Possible stress-induced cardiac complication, they said. The press caught wind, but none could confirm. The British consulate rang Cedars-Sinai repeatedly only to be told the patient was stable and under observation. Then came the official word from Buckingham Palace. The king is receiving medical attention for a brief episode and is currently stable. Further updates will be shared in due course, but it said nothing of the tension building behind the palace gates, nothing of the visible rift between the monarch and his queen, nothing of the whispered breakdowns or the recent weeks of brooding silence. What no statement could explain was the one lingering truth. This moment hadn't come out of nowhere. Camilla eventually arrived at the hospital escorted by 2 aides. She was seen entering through a private hallway, her face hidden beneath a large brim hat and dark sunglasses. To the UK, and Queen Camilla has visited King Charles in hospital in London. Those who saw her said she looked tired, more so than usual, and avoided eye contact. She didn't speak to the press, nor was she photographed leaving the hospital again that day. Inside Charles's room, she reportedly sat in silence, not holding his hand, but near enough to be seen. The two exchanged only a few words overheard by staff as a mix of guilt, sorrow, and quiet regret. One insider claimed Camilla whispered, "I didn't know it had gone this far," before turning away to compose herself. Outside, the world speculated. Was this the beginning of a deeper health crisis? Had the emotional burden of the crown paired with personal isolation and mounting stress driven the king to the edge? Or was it something darker, something rooted not in the body, but in the soul of the monarchy itself? Whatever the answer, it wasn't in the headlines. It was buried beneath layers of royal secrecy, personal silence, and a ticking medical clock. Now comes what many feared, the diagnosis. But what did the doctor see that Camilla refused to hear? Stay with us. The diagnosis. By the time King Charles was wheeled through the private entrance of King Edward VII's hospital in London, the whispers outside had already snowballed into a deafening storm. News desks across Europe were alight with speculation. Words like relapse, cardiac crisis, and Regency trigger echoed through morning headlines. Social media braced for the worst while royal aides scrambled to maintain calm. But inside the quiet, dimly lit halls of the hospital, far from flashing cameras and breaking news tickers, the truth was unfolding under the fluorescent glow of clinical urgency. Upon arrival, Charles was pale, disoriented, and only partially responsive. He couldn't track basic questions. His speech was soft and garbled, and his pulse, a concern from the beginning, remained unstable. A team of top cardiologists, internal medicine specialists, and trauma consultants quickly surrounded the monarch, initiating a flurry of diagnostic tests. 4 lines were inserted, oxygen levels monitored. His vitals were erratic, but not failing. Not yet. What alarmed doctors most wasn't just the instability. It was the overlay of symptoms. The king wasn't just experiencing a cardiovascular episode. His blood work revealed traces of a strong anti-anxiety medication, legally prescribed, but in a dosage that raised eyebrows. Medical sources familiar with the intake revealed Charles had been quietly receiving treatment for anxiety and sleep-related disturbances for several months, likely due to the pressures of the crown, unresolved family rifts, and most concerning of all, an ongoing private battle with cancer. Yes, cancer. We've received breaking news from Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the king has been diagnosed with cancer. A truth the palace had tried to shield from the public. Originally believed to be under control, the condition had recently shown signs of resistance. Insiders shared that His Majesty had begun undergoing experimental treatments which, while promising, left him physically drained and emotionally fragile. Camilla had been urging him to rest, to delegate, even to consider postponing engagements, but Charles refused, insisting that stepping back now would only fuel speculation. A toxicologist later confirmed that while no overdose occurred, the cocktail of medication, fatigue, and emotional strain created a dangerous situation, especially for someone in Charles's condition. One nurse noted in her report that the king appeared mentally clouded, often trailing off mid-sentence and blinking repeatedly as if unsure whether he was awake or dreaming. But the moment that truly shook the hospital staff came when Charles reportedly asked, "Have I disappointed them all?" No one knew who he meant, his sons, his subjects, or perhaps Camilla. Camilla's arrival at the hospital was, as quiet as it was, emotionally complex. Dressed in black with her hair pulled back and her face hidden beneath a large scarf, she entered through the east wing without a word. Witnesses said her expression was tight, her jaw clenched. She walked into the king's room and, according to 2 staffers stationed nearby, remained by his side without touching him, just staring for a long, silent minute before sitting down beside the bed. Their relationship, once seen as an unstoppable love story that had conquered scandal and public backlash, had recently cooled behind closed doors. Sources claimed their disagreements had grown more frequent, often triggered by Charles's insistence on continuing intense work schedules, and Camilla's frustration with his refusal to acknowledge the toll it was taking. In one heated exchange weeks prior, she allegedly warned him, "You're giving too much of yourself to a world that never stops taking." Whether or not those words haunted him remains a mystery. But one thing was clear. His body was now fighting not only against illness, but against the emotional wreckage of duty, secrecy, and fading strength. Lab results soon painted a more complicated picture. The combination of cardiac stress, medication interaction, and a compromised immune system made it clear the king wasn't just collapsing under physical strain. His condition was part of something far deeper, an internal war between responsibility and mortality. Still, the diagnosis, though known now by a tight circle of specialists and advisors, had not been revealed to the public, and neither Camilla nor palace officials had yet agreed on how to handle the fallout. Behind locked doors, there were debates about timelines, press releases, and potential succession plans should Charles's condition deteriorate further. The nation waited, unaware of how serious things had become and just how fragile the king truly was. Though Charles is in stable condition, some questions still hang in the air. As he prepared for discharge, one curious royal protocol was silently put into motion during his final night at the hospital. What was it and why now? Stay close. Retreat of the crown. On the sixth morning, Buckingham Palace did something unheard of. It allowed King Charles III to slip away. He left King Edward III's hospital through a back service lift guarded by 2 bodyguards and a hospital therapist. No cameras clicked, no reporters yelled, only quiet wheels on concrete followed an unmarked car as it drove toward the Sussex coast. Its destination was a clifftop wellness lodge so secret that even online maps show only blank space. Staff call it the Haven. Hidden by tall cedars and electric fences, the Haven offers salty sea air, trauma therapy, and careful diets. But its main treatment is silence. Every room faces the channel, and nurses speak in whispers. Here, far from government papers and cheering crowds, Charles can start the hard math of recovery, subtracting meetings, speeches, and pressure to discover what is left when duty is gone. Doctors say he needs at least 3 weeks. Courtiers worry he will ask for briefings after 4 days. London, though, refuses to hush. Morning talk shows argue whether the palace hid the seriousness of his cancer or whether endless family troubles, the Sussex lawsuits, Prince Andrew's mess, and William's packed diary pushed a tired heart too far. Government offices got blunt notes. The Prince of Wales will cover more public tasks until further notice. Overnight, royal schedules were stripped. Many ceremonies vanished with one computer command. Camilla's agenda emptied as well. Insiders say she wakes before dawn, her car running outside Clarence House while she stares at her phone, thumb above the call button yet unable to press. Their last talk, overheard by a servant, ended with her begging him to rest and him replying, "Rest is abdication by stealth." She has not gone to the Haven. Messages passed through a single trusted nurse. In a voice note, she admitted, "Distance may heal his body, but could damage our bond." Across Britain, uncertainty spreads. The Archbishop of Canterbury practices the regency oath. Leaders of the Commonwealth ask for medical updates. Even the Royal Mint pauses its next coin run, unsure whether to stamp more coins with the king's face. Inside the Haven Stone Library, Charles writes apologies to staff he once scolded, drafts letters to his sons, and lists a smaller set of duties: private audiences, remote signatures, and no foreign trips for a year. Meanwhile, social feeds buzz with #restmiking while markets tremble and bookmakers shorten odds on a speedy regency, revealing deep public doubt about royal stability this week. A nurse heard him whisper, "If service ends, who am I?" The words drifted over the water like low fog, heavier than any lab result. For a man shaped by lifelong duty, is healing a gift or a punishment? Soon, the palace must reveal a recovery plan, and the nation will judge if a monarch can step back without giving up the throne. As King Charles battles more than just illness behind closed doors, will he ever truly return, or has the crown already begun to slip? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.